Right, we want to say good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good morning, depending on where you're watching us from, to OY Media Scotland. We are right back here again with our guest, Alagba Femi Odedeyi. He will be speaking to us on the topic we picked for today, which is the unfolding, the continual unfolding of events in Niger regarding the coup and the interaction that is going on both nationally and internationally, especially within Nigeria. And of course, on the other part, which is going to be the main focus of today's session, will be the Nigeria's restructuring agenda. I've got Alagba Femi Odedeyi right on here with us. Alagba Femi Odedeyi is the coordinator of the Yoruba Referendum Committee. You are most welcome on the program, sir.
All right, thank you for having me. And is it a good afternoon, good evening, and good morning? And once again, thank you.
Right, yes, thank you. Right, welcome, sir. We'll just kick off. We'll hit the ground running for today's program, and we're starting off from the Niger Coup. Last 2 weeks when we were here, we spoke about some of the narratives of the people about Nigeria wanting to invade Niger or wanting to start a war with Niger. And of course, in the course of the week, the president of ECOWAS had to come out to actually speak about this, that is quite unfair for people to be using the word invade or war regarding ECOWAS actions or the action that ECOWAS is taking on at the moment in order to restore democracy or democratic rule in Niger. Like he said, listen, this is one of the duties of ECOWAS to ensure that democracy flourish in Africa. So he said it specifically that it's not right for people to be using that word of invade and of wanting war with Niger. And that is ECOWAS generally. But within Nigeria, we've also seen people, unfortunately, a good majority of them from what is available to us, the stats, seems to be the people that were following the presidential candidate that came third in the last elections. They've been pushing that no, it's Nigeria that want to go and fight with Niger, and that spread right up until also the northern part of Nigeria, where some leaders or elders and basically other people have been talking about having cousins and brothers and sisters in Niger, and why it will not be reasonable for Nigeria to be involved in anything that ECOWAS wants to do regarding military intervention. And that is if every other options failed, that Nigeria should not take part in any military intervention in Niger. What are your thoughts about this, sir?
Well, it's very simple. What the reaction to the coup from Nigeria to the coup in Niger is simply an extension of the 2023 elections. The reason why I said so is this. Those who are supporting the coup in Niger, because that's what it amounts to, they are supporting the coup in Niger, are the same forces that are opposed to the election of Tinubu as president in Nigeria. Now, the worst part of it is that the excuses they are giving are so unreasonable that you start wondering sometimes what has become of the way we view things, the way we think. Okay, ECOWAS took a position, and they have been taking that position for some time, ECOWAS intervened militarily in Gambia, in Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, and in some other places. So ECOWAS now says they are not going to accept the coup, and all options are on the table, including the use of military force, which is a normal diplomatic language. Because even if you look at what has happened, after rebuffing the ECOWAS delegation, the Niger junta now says, okay, they will hand over power in 3 years. So that is like saying, okay, let us start negotiating with all the things. So that's a normal. But what has happened in Nigeria is that the opponents of Nigeria's participation in ECOWAS seem to be saying that it doesn't matter whether the coup is right or wrong. As long as it is not in Nigeria, we should not be bothered about it. So when they start saying, yes, our cousins are this and then our brothers and stuff, does that make military intervention a right intervention? Does it make military coup right? Even though if it is your cousins and brothers that are in the place. So, and for those who are saying it is war, they have just completely forgotten the various moves ECOWAS had made that had been rejected and rebuffed by the military junta in Niger. They refused to even meet the Sultan the first time, the Sultan and General Abubakar. They refused to meet ECOWAS delegation. So when you consider all that, that's why I said it's an extension of the 2023 elections in Nigeria. And then that also shows how short some people's memories are, in the sense that, during the apartheid regime, Nigeria and some other countries were in the forefront of asking the West, that is America, Europe, and all the rest, to impose sanctions on South Africa. And the reasons the opponents of sanctions were given at that time are exactly the same reasons these people are giving in Nigeria today. What were they saying in America and Britain, Thatcher and all the rest? That sanctions will hurt Black people, so they won't impose sanctions. And we were all shouting and demonstrating and all that. So now, when we now say we don't want military coup in West Africa, at least for starters, and ECOWAS imposed sanctions, you now find the same people now saying, no, sanctions, because they are cousins and brothers, this and that, they will be the ones suffering and all that and all that. So you can see that they have completely abandoned what I would call political morality in favor of their political agenda in Nigeria, hoping that the crisis in Niger will spill over into Nigeria and then disturb the democratic process that is going on. So that is what is happening, and it's very unfortunate. And when all the so-called reasons they are giving and all that. So the question now is, why are we in ECOWAS? Why should there be ECOWAS in the first instance? If any member country can just say, well, I've done it and that's it, there's nothing you can do about it, then why do we have ECOWAS? So it also brings forth the fundamental question of regional cooperation and sovereignty, which we will deal more in details when we start talking about the restructuring agenda. Because if you all the countries in West Africa signed the whole thing and they knew what, so when sanctions are now being put in place, you started remembering that you have brothers and cousins, but you are not telling your cousins and brothers that what they are doing in their country is wrong and it's not acceptable. So in a sense, you are saying, do it, get away with it. We can also do the same thing here and get away with it. And actually, there have been some people from the north that were looking at the Niger coup as an extension of some kind of jihad against the rest of Nigeria. I've read it somewhere that, yes, they are going to take the rest of the South as slaves. What does that mean? That's coming from a Nigerian. No? So the whole thing smacks of, it's just unfortunate that they are also black people, because when the European races says that black people don't reason, they only act on emotion. This is an example of it. That something that has been clearly decided that we don't want in West Africa, somebody went against it, and now you are trying to justify it. So you will discover that these same people that are justifying or excusing the coup in Niger will be the ones that will also support any military coup in Nigeria. And actually, if you look back at history, Nigerian history, that is, you will also discover that support for most coups in Nigeria are always from the same regions in Nigeria, against democracy. So, and those who are against Nadeco, the struggle against military rule, we know where they come from, mainly from the north, and the same excuses all over the place. So, at what point are we going to draw the line, even within Nigeria itself, rather than this rigmarole of doing this and doing that? So that's my take. That's why I said it is simply an extension of the 2023 elections, which the opponents or the losers are looking at, chasing at anything just to make sure that they disturb the current administration in power.
Right. Thank you very much for that. Just before you go on that topic, should the North have learned a lesson from Boko Haram, the way Boko Haram spread after they blocked or they influenced the United States to block arms sales to Nigeria?
Yeah, well, it's two-edged. The question can be answered in two ways, in equal measure. One is they implore the US to stop arming Nigeria,
yes,
in the hope that Boko Haram will ensure a paralysis of the Nigerian government. That is one side. The other side is that when Boko Haram paralyzes the Nigerian government, it will now give the North an advantage, because one, it is happening in the North and they can use anything to claim things. But the problem now is that Boko Haram has now transformed beyond a nuisance into a threat to them, in the North. So they now have to contain Boko Haram, and in the process of containing Boko Haram, they have to cede some power to the South. That is why you have all this brouhaha about rotation and power going to the South and all that. So that's why I say it's a two-edged sword, the question and the answers. So when they are doing that, they thought they would be able to contain Boko Haram within its local limits, without recognizing that Boko Haram actually exists to overthrow the northern establishment as a first step before taking on Nigeria. And the same thing is happening now by saying that Niger, we have brothers there, we have cousins there, this and that, dialogue and that, and this and this and this and that. So by the time the coup, let's assume that the coup now consolidates and ECOWAS is not able to do anything about it in Niger, then the thinking is that it will now transfer into Nigeria, that anything can happen in Nigeria, and then it will give them the upper hand to take back, quote unquote, the power that they have lost. But again, they have also failed to realize that the jihadists in the Sahel are aiming to overthrow all the governments, including military governments. Like we saw the report in Mali that after the military coup in Mali, the jihadists had expanded their territories.
Yes.
From in Mali, and the same thing is happening in Burkina Faso. So, and in Niger, plus all the reports that we have, that one of the problems the military has with Bazoum was on the prevention of migration, where Niger was a transit hub, which they are making money from and all that. So by the time they allow this military to sustain itself without ECOWAS and paralyzing ECOWAS, those who will be in control in Niger will just be the usual vagabonds in power, like Fela used to say. They'll just be the usual vagabonds in power, and they will become a threat even to other countries in West Africa. So the jihadists, because they are armed and ideological in what they are doing, it will be easier for them to also overthrow whoever is the military in Niger. And that will also now affect the power brokers in the north and their calculations. So if anyone is going to learn any lesson, it should be the northern leaders who are pampering or pandering to the jihadists in the hope that they are one family, as it were, religion, culture, everything like that. So that's the reality, and that is. I hope they have learned their lessons. If not, the rest of us will need to learn our own lessons.
Okay. Thank you very much for that. And that rolls into the second part, or the second part of the topic, which is Nigeria restructuring agenda. With this narrative of, yes, the people in Niger across the border, they are cousins, we have cultural affiliations and go with them. Should this not bring actually into the forum the need to restructure Nigeria along ethnic nationality or nationality lines? Since Nigeria, the formation of Nigeria, even the geographical formation of Nigeria now is actually ethnic driven. Yeah. We have the places are identifiable to each nationality. So if we're having these with what is happening in the north about cousins and brothers beyond the borders of Nigeria, should it not be like the north pushing for the country to be restructured? And just before you answer that, I want to bring up I think it was the Emir of Sungeru during the national conference, confab that was conducted then by ex-president Goodluck Jonathan, when they were discussing about splitting, the divisions, and he said, yeah, we will leave. If we are forced to leave Nigeria, we will leave. But then, yes, that we have cousins and brothers across, and then we will come back to fight you. So will it be a case where the North wants to actually stay in control? Is it like a struggle for power or for control? Because if the North is insisting that, no, you can't force us out of Nigeria, but then the North is willing to have like a non-border, not having practically any border between northern Nigeria and some of these parts of Niger. So two things, I think two questions around there. Shouldn't it actually be the North pushing for restructuring along nationality lines, bearing in mind that they have other people that are on the other side of the border, but they consider them as part and parcel of their cultural people, so that at least when they have power to themselves in their nationality, they can cater for those people without affecting the others. And then the second question is about the game that the North is playing, referring now to the statement of the Emir of Zungeru, then, that yes, you want to force us out, but we'll still come and fight you. So is it the North trying to eat his cake and have it at the same time?
Yes, absolutely. You see, the thing is, let's start from the second question, go back to the first question, and then come back to the second question again. See, for them, the scenario is this: like they cannot initiate the restructuring process in Nigeria because they know the implications for them. So what they will do is to try to truncate any restructuring process, at the same time working for their continuous control of Nigeria. Because when they control Nigeria, it will be easier for them to relate with their cousins and brothers outside Nigeria, because the economic power and base of Nigeria will fuel that kind of relationship. So the fear of losing that economic base is why they will not want to champion the restructuring. Now to the first question, back to the first question about that cross-border thing. You see, that is in human history. Certain events will always occur that will point to an obvious solution. It is now left for the what I would call the ruling ideas, the elite, the ruling ideas and the elite of those countries or those societies to take advantage of that situation and construct the future they want for themselves. And let's go back to, again, history. Let's look at the First and Second World Wars and its impact on the world today. You know, when they were fighting among themselves in Europe initially, they so destroyed Germany such that it became the beggar of Europe. And that was what gave rise to Hitler. That no, we will not like, we don't, God did not create us this way and blah, blah, blah. And then led to the Second World War. So after learning from the failure of the First World War and the international peace they tried to create at that time, which was called the League of Nations, by the end of the Second World War, which they also destroyed Germany, so they now employed the two-pronged tactics to draw Germany, to make sure that they are in control of Germany. So they drew Germany into the peace process, at the same time gave it economic aid to rebuild. So by the time they now created the United Nations, they now established a standard for themselves and then imposed the standard on the rest of the world. That's why you have the permanent members of the Security Council, to make sure that they decide, they are the deciders of what world peace means. In the case of Africa, we have been inundated. Generally, everyone says it, everyone knows it, everyone reads about it, that the colonial boundaries are artificial boundaries, that they split various nationalities into different countries because of whim, not for anything else. Just sat down and then divided it up based on their military, on the Europeans' military strengths on the African continent at that time. We all know it. In Nigeria specifically, people condemn the amalgamation, that the South was made to serve the North. So everyone knows it about the artificiality. And every time circumstances arise as to addressing it in a fundamental manner. I'm not talking about the various conferences, so that's the thing. But crises occur within the country based on this nationality considerations. But the ruling ideas, the ruling elites always fail to take advantage of it because they will claim they don't want to be accused of tribalism and this and this and this and that. And what were these things? By independence, the condition given by Britain forced the independence, even though the West insisted on that federal system. Then we saw what happened in 1962 when they tried to destroy the West. We saw what happened in 63 when they created the Midwest region without creating other regions, which had been the demand before independence. And then we know what happened with all the military regimes we've had. And the father of it all, or is it the mother of it all, was the June 12th annulment. And then the development of Niger Coup and all this and all that and everything that happened in between. So every moment, there are moments in the life of a society where a fundamental problem will arise with a fundamental solution in sight. So it now depends on the capacity and the capability of the leadership, the elite, and of course the people also of that society to seize that moment in order to arrive at that solution. So, and that is what is happening now. That okay, we are restructuring is not even on the agenda now. I mean, it's taking a back seat. We can talk about that later. But you can see that the situation in Niger has brought about the question of restructuring. It is very clear to everybody. Now, so the question now is for the North, as far as whether they are part of the planning of the coup or not, because again, the guy that they overthrew, Bazoum, is a minority Arab in Niger Republic. The guy that overthrew him is from the Hausa area. So, who knows? And when Sultan Abubakar, I think his name is Abubakar, Sultan of Sokoto, and General Abubakar went there. You know, Sultan already had said some time ago that he's the leader of Fulani in West Africa.
Yes.
Very long, he mentioned. So when the Fulani delegation, as it were, representing ECOWAS went for the first time, they refused to meet with them. Now, the same junta now met with an unofficial delegation largely made up of Kanuri. And that is Sule Lamido, who is the leader of the Tijaniya Muslim group in West Africa. They are largely Kanuri people. I mean, members of the Tijaniya are largely Kanuri. And then he went, that is Sule Lamido, went to meet with the Sultan of Damagam in Niger Republic, which is in the Kanuri area of Niger Republic. So the junta headed by the Hausa met with the Kanuri delegation, but did not meet with the Fulani delegation.
Right.
Okay. So whether the northern elites knew about the coup or not, that can be in the area of speculation. But from those facts, you can see a trend. And what is the trend? That in the north itself, that is northern Nigeria, we know that there's this tension between the Kanuri, Fulani, Hausa. They always find a way to, resolve it and this and that and find their ways out of it. But the Niger coup has now brought it back into the open. So for the North, it pays them to make sure that nothing happens to the coup in Niger, because that will sustain that balance that they were doing in Nigeria and in Niger, and then turn their faces up to ECOWAS. So that's what I meant by saying situations arise, that pose fundamental questions, because what is happening there, and I mean, really, one is not blaming them. It's just the reality that all the various nationalities in Africa were simply divided for no other reason except that I control this place, you control that place. So that's why you have the Yoruba in Benin, Togo, and all the rest. And you have we have our own cousins in Benin. Yes. So they have their own cousins. So one is not blaming them. One is just pointing out the reality of the situation. But for them, that is the dominant idea in the North, has to do with their attempts at perpetual control, which had started right from the Danfodio Jihad and all that, and how they virtually blackmailed the British under the independence, that unless they control the federal parliament, they will not agree to the independence thing. And Britain, for its own reasons, accepted it and gave them the largest number of seats in the parliament, which now allowed them to do all the kinds of things they did. So they are focused because they recognize that reality, and this has presented them with an opportunity, because if they succeed in paralyzing ECOWAS, that means the sovereignty of African countries, I mean West Africa, at least in West Africa, has become irrelevant. And then they will now use that, the new power they have, to dictate to whoever is the president or whoever is the head in any country. So that is the end game, to paralyze ECOWAS and make sure that it's just one talk shop. So the opportunity that I'm now talking about is there for our own elite, for the change in the narrative of our own ideas, and therefore the ideas of the elites that are in control. They are in control of the ideas. They are also in control of power. To now seize the situation and say, look, this is not a question of fighting. This is the situation as it presents itself, and the only way actually is to restructure Nigeria in such a manner that everybody will be their brother's keeper, because we all recognize the artificiality of the borders, and we can be our own cousins keepers in Benin. You can be your own cousins keeper. And more importantly, the incident that happened in 1966, because when we are talking of these things, it also has a bearing on the military. When Brigadier Ogundipe was supposed to take over after the coup and the crisis and all that, he was supposed to take over the leadership as the most senior officer. Right. And one northern, I think, sergeant simply refused to take orders from him openly. And that was when Ogundipe said, this army is finished, though. The man just jumped into a submarine and fled for his life. So a similar thing can happen where you have a Yoruba or Southern commander being defied openly by a what they call other ranks in the army. And they can do that only because the political situation favors them. Because at that time in 1966, the whole country was in chaos, nobody knows what is happening and all that. But it appears that the northern officers in the Nigerian army were in control. So they were able to dictate things. So now, if the northern establishment, that is the Hausa, Kanuri, everybody get away with truncating ECOWAS, they will have created a political precedent for any northern officer to defy, any northern soldier to defy any southern officer. And once that begins to happen, it katakata will burst, as they say. It becomes, so to prevent all these things, it is better. And my own consideration is more directed at the Yoruba political establishment. I call them Yoruba political establishment because, both in power and out of power, including the president. Yes. So that this is an opportunity, actually a God-given opportunity, to now address what we call the national question in its direct form, because that is what it has presented.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is what it has presented. And to do that, if we do it successfully in Nigeria, it will serve as a beacon to others in West Africa. Because if you look at it, even all those people they call terrorists and jihadists in Mali and stuff, they were mostly Tuaregs who are fighting for their own self-determination, but who now aligned with the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda because, weapons and money and all that and all that. But they actually declared their own republic at one point in Mali, the Azwadi something. And if you look at even in Burkina Faso and all the rest of them, you find that all these people they call terrorists and jihadists are actually members of nationality communities that are seeking self-determination for themselves. But because of the situation that they found themselves, either under military coup and this and that, and the kind of support, and when you want to fight for your community and you say you are going to fight and create an army, of course you need funding, you need weapons, you need this, you need all that. And they fell into the hands of so that is what is happening. So if Nigeria can take the bull, if President Tinubu, not even Nigeria, if President Tinubu can take the bull by the horns and say, okay, for the sake of ECOWAS, or for the sake of regional integration, and for the sake of peace among the various peoples that were dispersed in West Africa into different countries, let's restructure Nigeria as we had thought originally before independence. Doing that, when you have your resources, you can take care of your cousins anywhere. Like we have said in Yoruba land, for example, in the Western region, when they established the University of Ife in the 60s, the first foreign language department they had was Portuguese. Among, we are a British colony, the French are here, but they chose Portuguese. Why? Because Brazil has the largest concentration of Yoruba people outside Africa, and Portuguese is their language. So their thinking at that time was that, okay, if we have Portuguese as a foreign language here, it will be easier for us to relate with our people in Brazil, our cousins in Brazil, language-wise and all the rest. And of course, it was in the state of Bahia in Brazil where they built or bought that house, what they call the Nigerian house or something like that, which was eventually taken over by the Nigerian government. Yes. So there's nothing wrong in recognizing the existence of your cousins anywhere. We are not saying it is bad. All we are saying is that don't let us use any state power to suppress one cousin for the other, to put it that way. So let us reorganize the state power that will be favorable to everybody. They can now relate with their cousins in any manner that they want. And that's the simple. That is the challenge before the Yoruba political establishment.
Right. And obviously that brings us to actually the Yoruba political leadership, both the political leadership as well as the cultural or the social cultural leadership. The Yoruba have always been at the forefront of restructuring the country. Of all the major tribes in Nigeria, everybody knows that when it comes to federalism, which obviously they've given an extra now to call it true federalism, showing clearly that there is false or true federalism. So you know that Yoruba has always been on that line of having federalism, the proper federalism in Nigeria, where each people can move at their own pace without being dragged or being held down, which is what is happening. And in the course of the past 3 years, there was a sort of a high decibel in the chants and narrative about restructuring Nigeria, Yoruba nation now. We want to go. We are calling the United Nations to come and run referendum for us. And then suddenly the election came. Even some of the groups that were pushing for Yoruba nation, and they don't even want any Yoruba person to get involved with the elections. I mean, immediately after the election, they all just went quiet. To the extent that it would seem that they were really not serious about the call for federalism or the call for restructuring. People looking from outside would just think that, okay, they were making those noises just to ensure that somebody from their side gets into presidency. But, I mean, people that are insiders obviously knows that that was not the target for most of these organizations that were even against the person that became the president now. But suddenly they are not pushing for that that restructuring or referendum. They are not even talking about it again. I mean, how would you consider this? I mean, with your understanding and knowledge of what has been happening before now, during the election and after the elections. I mean, what could be the reason for just almost all of them to have just
silence? Well, there are several reasons, mostly anchored on the what I would call the limitation of the idea. You know, earlier on I said the dominant idea and the dominant elite, or that the dominant elite dictates the dominant ideas. So because it's an electoral system and people are contesting for election, so the results of the election will have an effect on the demands of, all these agitations. Okay, so you now have a dominant elite that believes that the best way to achieve whatever it is they want to achieve, including restructuring, is by winning the elections. That is a different subject entirely, but let's just take it like that. Meanwhile, the opponents are saying either out of fear that will not win, that is, the Yoruba candidate will not win, or it will be another June 12th will happen, or something like that. So they decided to close their eyes and block their minds to challenging the ideas, the dominant ideas of the electoral people. So all they were doing was just to react to what I would call political phantoms. We want a nation, we want Yoruba nation. And at that time, we were telling them, okay, look at what has happened in Niger now. So if you want a Yoruba nation, if you look at all the coups that have been happening across the Sahel, of course, despite the underground issues, they will always claim they want to sustain the territorial integrity of their countries, which was created by colonial rule. So to campaign for a Yoruba nation outside, that is to move out of Nigeria, will mean to become, they will now fight against you because they will claim that you are trying to dismember Nigeria. So the ideas are not relevant for the situation. Now, the other, some of them that were talking about restructuring and all that, again, you see the fears of what will be the possible outcome of this election. So, as a stopgap, they rambled up the noise about restructuring. So immediately the candidates won. Everybody said, okay, now let us develop the country. So you will see that the dominant ideas led by the dominant elite in the electoral system is what is driving everyone else now. But the advantage the agitators and the opposition have is that the disadvantage, not advantage. Their disadvantage is that they did not develop, whether they have the capacity or not, that's a different issue. But they did not develop a counter idea, a counter narrative to the electoral system, in the sense that, yes, we are not angling for war, we are not agitating violence, we are not setting up an army, but this electoral system can be pushed in such a manner to achieve our desired goals. So if they have done that, then they will be able to challenge the dominant ideas being perpetrated by the dominant elite, the political establishment. So if Tinubu says, yeah, I'm a Democrat, and he has proven it over and over, we can push Nigeria forward, and this and this and this, we can do this, we can do that to make Nigeria great and all that. Fine. So the question is, how do we make Nigeria great? Is it by your staying in power for 8 years? We know what has happened previously in Nigeria, that any government can come in and rubbish whatever it is that you have done. And in the particular case of the Western region, everything that we talk about today, that we call the golden era and this and this and this and this and that, well, they were wiped out in short order by the military regime. And in fact, our flagship economic model, which is Odua Investment, was almost decreed out of existence by Babangida, if not for the intervention of his friend, MKO. So now, are we now going to be waiting for a friend of anybody to protect our interests? No. So we have all that. But these agitators did not reckon with that in challenging the dominant narrative that your method of achieving power through the ballot box is okay. The restructuring can also be achieved in similar manner, and this is how it's going to be achieved. That is where we, the Yoruba Referendum Committee, that's where we are different from all of them, because we said, and we stated it openly, that when they were doing their primaries, we said we are not going to take any stand. Anybody that wins from Yoruba land is okay by us. Then the question is, after victory, what do you do? That is where we placed our own agenda on the table. So the question now is whether that dominant electoral tendency in Yoruba land, because of what is happening, again, you remember when I said opportunities arise, with what has happened in Niger, in the Niger coup, and the reaction of, I like one expression by, I think, is it Lekan Shote, one columnist in The Punch, who who call them Nigerians in Nigeria. So with everything that is happening with the Niger Coup and stuff like that, has provided an opportunity for the restructuring to take place. So the question is, how do we ensure that it is done? But the problem, the obstacle there is that most of the agitators are so far gone in their fantasies that they have failed to come to terms with the reality on ground. And that's why they are keeping quiet now. Because if all the Yoruba groups, or most of them, that are chanting restructuring, federalism, and this and this and this and this and that, are able to become the voice for what we are advocating, that is Yoruba referendum or nationality referendum in the rest of Nigeria, it will send a signal to even the Yoruba establishment that we have to do something about this. But, I'm not saying we are not doing our best too. We are trying, but because, they see what we are doing and read what we are writing. So, but the basic point is that the agitators lack the ability to challenge the dominant idea in the system, that is the Yoruba political space. So that is why they are keeping quiet. And that is why it appears as if the ruling idea, the ruling ideas of the dominant party has become the totality, and why everywhere seems to be, there's a film that's the title is all is quiet on the Western Front or something like. I didn't watch it. I just saw the title. It's a film about, I think, the Second World War. They say all quiet on the Western Front. So all is quiet. All is quiet in the West. We are not quiet. We are still making our noise. But generally, all is quiet simply because of the ability and capacity of the agitators to challenge, or not even challenge, to engage. That's the language we always use, to engage the ruling ideas as to the way forward. And the opportunity, as we didn't cause the coup in Niger, we didn't ask the cousins and brothers in the north to do what they are saying. So these things are happening, and it is a pointer to the direction that the Tinubu administration should take. How we get it to that point is our responsibility now. So all the odds are in our favor, and I can only hope that we will take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you very much. We get in almost to the end of the program now because of our time. But there's one question that I want to ask. Yes. Now, we know quite most of these agitators, groups, even those that were right on the street shouting about Yoruba Nation, have gone quiet. Yeah. Your group is still pushing for the Yoruba referendum bill that is already before the 6 Southwest Houses of Assembly, that is in Yoruba land. Yeah. Have you thought about any, whether from them or from your side, about sort of collaborations that could bring all these quiet organizations, that could bring them back up, but not in a manner of their narratives or the elections, where they just want Yoruba Nation and nothing, that they were not even willing to engage with the political class. But with the realities now, is there a possibility of a collaboration between, especially, and we are talking about the Yoruba agitators now. I mean, we're speaking about the North. We know the North has always been on that line when it comes to issues like this. They have cousins there, and they can't push them out. So, but for the Yoruba that has this federalism and restructuring as its main political objective, obviously the president has mentioned it as well, but the president might not be able to do it alone, except there's also a civil pressure from this organization. So is there any thoughts about the organizations coming together, not becoming just one, but all of them working in collaboration and obviously taking the step the right way should have been done?
Yes, there are discussions with some organizations. There are ongoing discussions as to what needs to be done. And most of these organizations also have their own internal problems.
Sure,
today they will split up, tomorrow they will have new. In fact, right from Afenifere, the most popular, down to any other organization, they have their own internal issues that they are trying to grapple with. So we are mindful of that, but we are still in talks or discussions with some of them. Hopefully, the tendencies that agree to work with us will prevail in some of those organizations, and we'll be able to present a common front to the. Even we are also engaging the APC leaders in Yoruba land on this issue, not just the assembly, the significant. So they will know. So I hope I hope that some of these things will materialize. And of course, we recognize those who cannot be open about what side they are on. So we give room for all that. There are some individuals that will not want to be openly identified, but they will say, yeah, go ahead, we are behind you. Fine. So different things like that. So there are things we are working on, and hopefully we'll be able to arrive at some decision. Probably, call a meeting and stuff like that. And then, but the only appeal I will want to make is that for most of these organizations, they have to come down from their high horses.
Exactly.
It's as simple as that. They have to come down from their high horses and start dealing with reality. And of course, we cannot go about now saying, let us go and demonstrate somewhere and all that, because it's not, especially with the current economic situation and all that. And then, in fact, the whole economic situation also provides a context for the entire restructuring agenda in an economic manner. So these are issues that have presented themselves that we should take by the horns. And, like the president said, I think in response to the US, that he won't, the Niger coup will not, he doesn't want it to affect his economic agenda. Okay, so if the coup will not affect, and the whole thing all boils down to restructuring Nigeria, because we have seen it now. There's no way you can reform the economy without reforming the political structure. It's just impossible. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
We all need to come down from our high horses and then,
and form a collaboration.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much, Alagba Femi Odedeyi. We know that the president has always talked about federalism, about restructuring Nigeria, even before he became president. He's also mentioned it after he became president. However, people are still waiting to see what path he wants to follow. But like we've said, the president should not just be left to when he feels that, when he's ready, because there are quite lots of things that are being done at the moment. And we should also not forget that there's political, how do I call it, around the presidency as well. There are political forces. Yes, thank you very much. Political forces as well from different parts of the country. So it becomes very important for the agitators for restructuring. I mean, since the president also mentioned about it, so it will be like the agitators also standing up and making that demand and having probably conferences, discussions, and putting things out there for the people to know, so that the president will not forget. So it will not be when we're going to have the next election in another 4 years, that they will not carry the placard of Yoruba Nation now, and then people will just say that these people are not serious. So we're hoping, like you said, that people will be awake to their responsibilities, especially now that Yoruba has an opportunity of someone that is there and who also believe in the restructuring of the country. Thank you so much.
Just a quick point. Just a quick, this is our second opportunity. Obasanjo was there, and we know what he did even to Yoruba land. That is not to our liking. So Tinubu is now there, and aside from what he has been saying and stuff, we also now have to put up our own responsibility to make sure that what we needed to do, and of course the circumstances surrounding the whole thing, is also there to make. Because if we don't, I don't know when another Yoruba, even before another Yoruba man gets there, we don't know whether we will still be Yoruba people or we'll just become, as one of them put it, that they want to enslave Yoruba land. He put it in writing, that may be his own personal opinion, but it's also a significant expression.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time, and for people that have been watching us or those that will watch this later. Alagba Femi Odedeyi is from the Yoruba Referendum Committee. Like I mentioned earlier, the committee already has a bill for Yoruba referendum before the states houses of assembly, 6 Southwest states houses of assembly, and people are being encouraged to sign the petition, which is still right on Google, Yoruba referendum. This is not the UN approach, but this is the one that is meant to be done inside. In Yoruba, they say, Latin so the committee believes that things should start right from inside, and then when it gets out there, then they can ask UN to come and observe, not to conduct. So please check that up on Google. And of course, if you want to reach Alagba Femi Odedeyi or Yoruba Ref, they have presence on social media, especially Facebook. Just type Yoruba Referendum Committee there. Or the email for the organization is yorubaref@gmail.com. Like he said, agitators out there, there's things has been done. People that have followed dead hands have come to that end, but that's not the end. There is still an opportunity to work alongside with others in order to continue that agitation, so that the ears of the president could be full and then action could start to take place. Thank you once again, Alagba Femi Odedeyi, and thank you for those that have been on the program with us. We will see you in 2 weeks' time because this program is done fortnightly. I'll give Alagba Femi Odedeyi about 1 minute to sign out from the program. Over to you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. What I will just say is that we should thank God that opportunities have arisen that will put the restructuring agenda on the table for everybody. And we need to pray for strength to carry to take to see the opportunity and make use of it. Otherwise, if we lose that opportunity, uh, um, the the fault, I think one writer says that the fault is not in our stars. I'm not sure who said it. So we have no one to blame but ourselves. Because, like I said earlier, we didn't create the unfolding political scenario in West Africa. We didn't create it. It came, and all we need to do is to make use of it and push it towards our desired goal. Because if without that situation unfolding, uh, restructuring could still remain a question of argument or intellectual discourse. But we have been given a practical demonstration of why it is necessary. So that's what I would just implore every one of us to see the reality on ground and embrace it. Like we said, we are not quarreling with anybody and their cousins. Every one of us, we have cousins in the West. The East, they have their cousins in Cameroon and everywhere else and stuff. So, and then the opportunity to address a historical need, which started with the partition of Africa in 1884, which led to the amalgamation that we are crying about in Nigeria, and which has now led to this situation. So, as human beings, endowed by God to be able to think, we should be able to look at what is happening and see it as an opportunity to move the narrative in the direction that we want. So, I thank you once again for listening, and we'll continue to listen. And when we come back again, we expect that you will also listen and continue to encourage us. We do receive some encouragement, words of encouragement from some people who they will
Yeah,
just say, keep up the good work. Do this. These are encouraging stuff that, our time is not wasted. So we expect similar things, and that I will just say that people should not be afraid. Like President Tinubu said, I like quoting him, "Ẹ lọ fọkàn balẹ̀." So ẹ jẹ́ ká fọkàn balẹ̀, ká dẹ̀ ṣe nǹkan tó yẹ ká ṣe. It's not for nothing that Awolowo the UPN, is it Awolowo or what they call the Yoruba anthem? Àwa ni ògo adúláwọ̀.
yes.
Yes. So, and what is Ogo Adulawo, the light of the black? So, what is the point in being the light and not being able to show the way? So, the way is there. Everything is pointing in the direction of that way. So, why are we holding back?
Sorry.
So, that's it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we shall see you in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. So for our listeners, thank you very much for joining us today, and apologies for that short and intermittent interference. The internet or the IT at times is not ordered to perfect, but thank you so much for joining us. In another 2 weeks, we'll be here with Alagba Femi Odedeyi, and we'll be looking to other unfolding events across Africa and especially in Nigeria. So, and that is me signing out for now. My name remains Samuel Oludare Jirokun. Thank you.